Have you ever wondered why the most restrained, disciplined, and seemingly unshakable of men can suddenly lose their composure in the presence of a woman who moves with quiet mystery? Why a man who commands boardrooms, armies, or nations can find himself strangely disarmed by a single glance, a silence, a presence he cannot define? Beneath the armor of masculine certainty lies a confession rarely spoken aloud. Men secretly worship what they cannot control. And among the most feared and desired forces in the human psyche is the forbidden feminine energy, the untamed, unyielding essence that refuses to be possessed. Jung called it the anima, the feminine soul image buried in the unconscious of every man. It is not merely softness, not only tenderness, but the vast oceanic current of creation and destruction. It is the archetype of the goddess, the sorceress, the mother, the lover, the destroyer. It is the aspect of woman that terrifies because it cannot be reduced to logic, to rules, to rationality. And yet, paradoxically, it is also what men crave most deeply, because within that mystery lies the key to their own lost wholeness. A man may never confess this hunger to anyone. To do so would fracture the image he projects to the world, the image of self-control, linear power, and rational dominance. Yet in the dark recesses of his mind, he dreams of the woman who will stir the parts of him he has banished, his vulnerability, his longing, his awe, his capacity for surrender. He secretly prays for the touch of the forbidden feminine because it dissolves the rigid walls of his ego, because it reminds him that beneath his titles and achievements, he is still a man trembling before the great mystery of life. And this feminine energy is forbidden precisely because it cannot be systematized, commodified, or contained. Society tells women to tone it down, to be agreeable, polite, digestible, safe. But the energy Jung alluded to is not safe. It is fire, water, storm, and stillness in one. It is the gaze that strips a man bare, the laughter that unsettles his certainty, the silence that forces him to confront himself. Men are taught to desire the predictable, but they are magnetized by the unpredictable. They may claim to want compliance, but their souls ache for the woman who embodies something they cannot tame. Think of the myths. Eve with the forbidden fruit, Lilith who refused to submit, Persephone who journeyed into the underworld, Circe, Medea, Cleopatra. The ancients wrote of these women not because they were villains, but because they embodied a truth men dared not name. The feminine that cannot be caged will forever haunt them. Every man carries within him this archetypal memory, and every woman holds within her the possibility of awakening it. What you must see is that this energy is not about playing games or wielding manipulation. It is about embodiment. It is about a woman who has descended into her own shadow, faced her wounds, and emerged not as someone desperate for validation, but as someone radiant in self-possession. When a woman no longer begs to be chosen, when she radiates her being as though the sun itself rests within her chest, a man cannot help but feel it. His unconscious recognizes her before his conscious mind catches up. He feels the sacred terror of encountering something both holy and dangerous, the woman who belongs not to him, but to herself. This is the paradox of male desire. He worships the feminine that does not revolve around him. He is magnetized by the one who could walk away, the one who does not collapse into his moods, the one whose silence speaks louder than pleading. For in her refusal to submit to his ego, she reflects to him the vastness of the feminine unconscious he has buried within himself. She is the living symbol of his anima, and in her he sees the possibility of his own completion. But because it demands, he confronts his inadequacy, his fragility, his need. He both worships and fears her. So when a woman embraces her forbidden energy, when she ceases to chase, to explain, to justify, when she embodies mystery instead of seeking approval, she activates something primal in a man. She awakens not his shallow attraction, but his reverence. His conscious mind may resist, may try to diminish, may even mock, but his unconscious kneels. He knows, even if he will never admit it, that this is the force he has been waiting for, the one thing he cannot buy, control, or conquer. And so the greatest irony emerges. The feminine energy men secretly worship is the very energy they try to suppress. Yet no suppression can kill it. It is older than civilization, deeper than culture, stronger than repression. It lives in every woman who dares to reclaim it, and when she does, she ceases to be an option among many. She becomes the archetype of the eternal feminine, the force that men, whether kings or beggars, cannot help but fall before. It is in the stillness of the night, when the noise of the world fades and the masks fall away, that men confront this hidden truth. The image of her, the woman who embodies the forbidden feminine, appears not in his conscious rational thoughts, but in dreams, in fantasies, in flashes of memory he cannot suppress. Jung understood this well. What is repressed does not vanish, it resurfaces with greater intensity. The anima rises from the depths of a man's unconscious, often appearing in symbolic forms, an elusive stranger, a goddess, a dangerous lover, always carrying the dual power to heal or to destroy. This duality is precisely why the energy is feared. For to worship the forbidden feminine is to risk being shattered. A man's ego is built upon control, order, hierarchy, achievement. Yet the anima does not bow to these structures. She arrives like a storm that tears down the fortress he has spent his life building. And though his conscious mind resists, some deeper part of him longs for this destruction, because only through it can he be made whole. In her presence, he is forced to confront the emptiness behind his power, the hollowness of his victories, the loneliness hidden beneath his pride. Consider how many men pursue status, wealth, recognition, all in the hope that it will earn them devotion. Yet when they finally achieve these things, when they stand at the pinnacle of what society praises, they often feel more isolated than ever. The adoration of the crowd is shallow. The loyalty of the world is conditional. But the presence of a woman who embodies her own mystery pierces deeper than all of this. She does not worship his success. She sees through it. She is not impressed by his achievements. She sees the boy within, the wounds, the longing, the raw humanity he has tried to hide. And this is where the forbidden feminine becomes dangerous. Because when a man senses that a woman sees the truth of him, not just the image he projects, he is both drawn to her and terrified of her. To be known at this depth is intoxicating, yet unbearable. It strips him of his armor. He is revealed not as the invincible figure he pretends to be, but as a human being trembling in the presence of something greater than himself. Many women misunderstand this power. They believe men only desire the agreeable, the easy, the endlessly accommodating. But deep in their unconscious, men yearn for the opposite, the woman who challenges them, who unsettles them, who awakens the dormant parts of their soul, not because she shouts or demands, but because her very presence calls them into confrontation with their own shadow. She does not try to control him. She simply refuses to abandon herself for him. And in this refusal lies her magnetism. The forbidden feminine energy cannot be faked, for it arises not from tactics, but from inner work. It is the woman who has descended into her own depths, who has faced rejection, heartbreak, loss, and betrayal, and yet has not closed her heart. Instead, she has become deeper, wilder, more expansive. She no longer fears her own intensity. She no longer apologizes for her needs. She no longer bends herself into a shape to be chosen. She has chosen herself, and it is this self-possession that men worship in secret. You must understand, the man is not worshipping you as a person, though he may think he is. He is worshipping the archetype you embody. He is worshipping the part of himself he has lost, the vast feminine unconscious he has buried in the name of masculinity. When he kneels before you in reverence, it is not just you he kneels before. It is the eternal feminine, the goddess energy you carry, the mirror of his soul he has tried to suppress. And this is why his worship is so fragile, so volatile. For if he is not prepared to integrate what he sees, he may turn against you. He may demonize the very energy he craves, because to accept it would mean the death of the man he thought he was. This is why so many powerful women throughout history have been both adored and condemned. They awaken devotion in men, but also resentment, fear, and violence. Cleopatra could move empires, yet was vilified. Joan of Arc led armies, yet was burned. The archetype of the forbidden feminine is both sacred and dangerous, precisely because it calls men into transformation. And transformation is always resisted before it is embraced. So when you embody this energy, you must know the cost. You will not be universally adored. Some men will worship you in silence. Others will flee. Some will attack, ridicule, or attempt to diminish you. But through it all, you will remain untouchable, because your energy does not come from their approval, it comes from within. And the man who is ready, truly ready, will recognize it not as a threat, but as a gift. He will not try to control it. He will not try to cage it. He will stand before it in awe, knowing that in surrendering to it, he is not diminished, but expanded. He is finally brought into wholeness, not by conquering you, but by allowing himself to be transformed in your presence. There comes a moment when the forbidden feminine energy ceases to be merely an abstract idea and becomes a visceral encounter. A man meets her eyes across a crowded room, and suddenly his carefully arranged world tilts. Something in him stirs. A recognition, as if he has seen her before in a dream or in a memory that belongs not to this lifetime, but to the eternal memory of the soul. It is in this instant that Jung's words echo. The anima appears as guide, muse, destroyer, and redeemer. She arrives not to flatter his ego, but to awaken his unconscious. This awakening is not gentle, it unsettles, it strips away illusions. The forbidden feminine is not the comforting mother or the submissive lover. She is the storm, the sacred chaos, the reminder that life is not meant to be sterile, controlled, or predictable. Her energy disrupts his patterns, not because she intends harm, but because growth is impossible without disruption. And though he may resist, he also craves it. For buried beneath his need for order lies a hunger for depth, for ecstasy, for the fire that only comes from stepping into the unknown. Men secretly worship this energy because it connects them to what they have lost. Vulnerability, emotional intensity, the capacity to surrender. In a society that rewards stoicism, conquest, and linear thinking, men are often cut off from their own inner richness. They learn to suppress tears, to bury tenderness, to reject their own softness. Yet the forbidden feminine reintroduces these qualities in a form too powerful to ignore. She becomes the bridge back to the exiled parts of themselves. Her gaze says, "I see you." Not the mask, not the role, but you. And in that moment, he feels both terror and relief, because being truly seen is the one thing he has always wanted and the one thing he has always feared. But make no mistake, this energy cannot be owned. It cannot be tamed, bargained with, or reduced to a role in his story. That is why it is forbidden. The moment he tries to control it, it slips away. The woman who carries it is not here to play a part in his fantasy. She is here to embody her own truth. If he is ready, he will walk beside her, transformed by the fire she awakens. If he is not, he will demonize her, label her dangerous, call her too much, too intense, too uncontrollable. Yet even as he speaks these words, he will think of her in the quiet moments, unable to erase the imprint she left on his soul. You see, the forbidden feminine energy is not about seduction in the shallow sense. It is about sovereignty. A woman who embodies it does not lower her voice for approval. She does not dilute her passion to be palatable. She does not sacrifice her essence for validation. She lives from the core of her being, and in doing so, she reminds every man she meets of what he has forgotten. That life is not measured in victories or possessions, but in the intensity with which it is lived. To men, this energy feels like fire and water at once, consuming, cleansing, ungraspable. They may seek it in lovers, in art, in mysticism, in intoxication, but nothing compares to its living presence in a woman who knows her worth. She is not trying to attract. She is not performing. She simply is. And in her being, she radiates a magnetism stronger than any mask of beauty, wealth, or charm. Yet, for the woman who carries this energy, there is a burden as well as a gift. To embody the forbidden feminine is to live outside of approval. It is to know that some will worship her, others will hate her, but few will ever remain neutral. Her presence polarizes because she awakens what people most long for and most resist. She must stand firm in her own center, unmoved by either adoration or rejection, because both are projections, reflections of what others see in her, not the truth of who she is. This is why shadow work is essential. Without it, the woman risks mistaking her energy for manipulation, using it as a weapon rather than a force of liberation. But when she has done the work, faced her wounds, integrated her darkness, healed her fractures, then her energy becomes something purer, freer. She does not wield it to dominate or destroy. She simply radiates it, and those who are ready will be transformed by it. For the man, the choice is clear. He can recoil, retreat to the safety of his illusions, cling to control, and demonize what he does not understand. Or he can surrender, not to her as an individual, but to the transformation she represents. To surrender does not mean weakness. It means expanding beyond the limits of his ego. It means becoming more whole, more alive, more human. And in this surrender, he does not lose himself. He finds himself. The forbidden feminine is the mirror of his soul. She reflects what he has repressed, what he has feared, what he has yearned for. And though he may resist, somewhere deep inside, he knows the truth. He was never meant to live without her. The forbidden feminine energy is not confined to romance or desire. It permeates every aspect of existence. She is present in the woman who refuses to stay silent in the face of injustice, whose voice cuts through the complacency of the collective. She is in the artist who channels her pain into creation, birthing beauty from the ashes of her own suffering. She is in the mother who protects her child with a ferocity that no system, no authority, no structure could ever bend. And she is in the solitary woman who chooses solitude over compromise, who walks away from what does not honor her soul, even if it means walking into the wilderness alone. Men recognize her, often without fully understanding. Some are drawn like moths to flame, intoxicated by her defiance of the ordinary. Others recoil, unsettled by a presence that demands more than they are willing to give. For the forbidden feminine is not gentle in her lessons. She requires depth, honesty, and courage. She requires a man to strip away his false armor and meet her in naked authenticity. To do otherwise is to drown in the very waters that could have cleansed him. CarlJung spoke of the anima as the inner feminine within the male psyche, often appearing first as an idealized figure of beauty and comfort, but evolving into something far more profound. When a man encounters a woman embodying this forbidden energy, he is forced to confront his own anima. She ceases to be an external fascination and becomes a psychological mirror. Her presence asks him, will you remain a prisoner of the ego? Or will you descend into yourself and reclaim what you have disowned? This is why men both worship and fear her. She is the key to their wholeness, but the door she opens leads into shadow before it reveals the light. And you, yes, you, how often have you dimmed your own flame because the world told you it was too much? How often have you softened your edges, lowered your voice, or hidden your hunger because men found it intimidating? Do you realize what you carry? That what they secretly worship is the very thing you've been taught to bury. The forbidden feminine is not something you must learn or acquire. It is already within you, coiled like a serpent, waiting for permission to rise. But rising is not without cost. To embody this energy means facing the loneliness of being misunderstood. It means walking away from shallow love and demanding more than surface connection. It means refusing to apologize for your desires, your boundaries, your intensity, and it means holding yourself with the kind of dignity that does not flinch when others project their fear or envy onto you. Men may chase after this energy, trying to capture it through conquest, sex, or possession. Yet the paradox is that the moment they try to own it, they destroy the very essence that draws them in. The forbidden feminine cannot be caged. She thrives in freedom, and her magnetism comes from the fact that she belongs to herself. This is why men secretly worship her, not because she gives herself away, but because she does not. In her refusal to be owned, she becomes irresistible. This is the great irony of attraction. What men say they want is often security, predictability, compliance. But what pulls them in, what burns itself into their psyche, is the woman who disrupts all of that. The woman who dares to be sovereign, whose energy cannot be reduced to a role, a title, or a possession. She awakens in them the longing for something they cannot name, their own lost soul. The Stoics spoke of inner freedom, of detachment from external approval. Seneca wrote that the one who is content with themselves is truly free, while Marcus Aurelius urged that the soul should stand upright, unshaken, and unyielding. The forbidden feminine embodies this wisdom not through abstract philosophy, but through lived reality. She stands firm in her truth. She does not beg for validation, nor does she collapse under rejection. Her worth is not contingent upon whether others recognize it. She radiates it because it is hers, not because it is granted. And so, when a man encounters her, he cannot help but feel small in her presence. Small, not in a way that belittles him, but in a way that humbles him. She reminds him of his own incompleteness, his own longing, his own shadow. Worship, in this context, is not about placing her on a pedestal. It is about recognizing that she holds a piece of the mystery that he has forgotten. The forbidden feminine is not a role any woman plays for approval. It is an essence, a presence, a way of being that is both ancient and eternal. To embody it is to live as fire and water, storm and stillness, chaos and creation. It is to remind the world, and men especially, that there is more to life than control, more to love than possession, more to existence than survival. And perhaps the greatest secret of all is this: the forbidden feminine does not seek worship. She seeks only to be. It is men who, in their hunger for what they lack, turn her presence into something sacred, dangerous, and unforgettable. The forbidden feminine energy becomes most radiant when a woman ceases to measure herself against the expectations of others. She no longer contorts herself to fit the mold of the good girl, the obedient partner, or the ever-pleasing presence. Instead, she allows her contradictions to coexist, fierce yet tender, nurturing yet unapologetically wild, luminous yet shadowed. In doing so, she embodies what Jung called the union of opposites, the sacred alchemy that makes her a living paradox. It is this paradox that unsettles men, and yet it is also this paradox that ignites their deepest reverence. For men are conditioned to crave clarity, control, and simplicity, but the feminine, in her fullness, is none of these. She is mystery. She is rhythm and tide, ebb and flow, creation and destruction woven into the same breath. When a man encounters her, he realizes that no strategy, no conquest, no rational framework will ever map her terrain. She cannot be solved, only experienced. And this experience forces him to confront something terrifying, that not everything in life can be possessed or understood. Some things must simply be surrendered to. This surrender, however, is not weakness. It is transformation. For when a man worships the forbidden feminine, what he is truly bowing to is the part of himself that longs to be whole. He kneels before the fire, not because it is fashionable, but because he feels his own heart burning with the desire to be cleansed, purified, and reborn. She is not his savior. She is his mirror. And in that mirror, he sees both his insufficiency and his possibility. But the danger is always this: men will try to control what they cannot fully embrace. They will attempt to cage the storm, to possess the flame, to tame the river. Yet in doing so, they extinguish what they most adored. The forbidden feminine cannot live where there is domination. She thrives only in the soil of freedom. Her energy is not transactional. It is not earned by flattery, bribery, or force. It flows naturally when she feels safe to remain unbound. This is why so many men find themselves worshipping her in secret. They cannot hold her in daylight, so they dream of her in darkness. And you, if you have ever felt too much, too wild, too untamable, know that this too muchness is the very essence men are drawn to. It is not your compliance that awakens worship, but your refusal to shrink. The world will always try to convince you that the way to be loved is to become smaller, softer, easier. But the truth is the opposite. The more you stand rooted in your own depths, the more you embody the kind of feminine power that bends the collective unconscious itself. The Stoic philosophers warned against chasing validation, for external approval is fickle and fleeting. Epictetus wrote that freedom comes when we cease to seek what is outside our control. The forbidden feminine understands this not through theory, but through embodiment. She does not chase, she attracts. She does not beg, she radiates. She does not negotiate her value, she knows it. And this knowing is what makes her untouchable. Men sense it immediately. They may be captivated by beauty, enchanted by charm, intrigued by intelligence. But the energy that leaves them restless at night is the essence of a woman who cannot be bought or broken. She is rare because she does not dilute herself for the comfort of others. She walks into the room as if she belongs everywhere, because her worth is not up for debate. It is not arrogance, it is sovereignty, and sovereignty is magnetic. The forbidden feminine also carries a dangerous gift. She awakens dormant desires in men. She stirs their anima, shaking loose what has been suppressed. Some will rise to meet this awakening with courage, choosing to evolve. Others will recoil, projecting their fears onto her, labeling her as manipulative, dangerous, or too much. Yet this too is a sign of her power. For whether they love her or resist her, no man leaves her unchanged. She is initiation in human form. To embody her is not to seduce men, but to remain unapologetically aligned with the truth of one's being. And in doing so, she teaches the deepest lesson, that power is not found in controlling others, but in mastering oneself. Men worship her because she reveals what they secretly long to achieve: wholeness, freedom, self-possession. And so the forbidden feminine walks, neither chasing nor retreating, but radiating a gravity that cannot be denied. She is worshipped not because she demands it, but because she embodies what the world has lost: mystery, sovereignty, and the courage to remain whole in a culture that profits from fragmentation. The woman who remembers this no longer bends her spirit for crumbs of affection. She becomes the one who chooses, who attracts, who radiates without apology. She becomes untouchable, unforgettable, undeniable. The forbidden feminine becomes most undeniable when she no longer seeks to be understood. For to be understood is often to be reduced, confined within the smallness of someone else's categories. She is not meant to be decoded. She is meant to be encountered. And in that encounter, something primal stirs within a man. He realizes that he is not standing before a puzzle to be solved, but before a force of nature that demands reverence. This reverence is not worship of a woman as an object, but worship of what she represents, the repressed and forgotten energies of life itself. In Jung's language, she is the anima brought to flesh, the gateway to a man's own soul. She terrifies him not because she is cruel, but because she carries him into waters he has avoided all his life. She pulls him beyond logic, beyond control, into the realm of feeling, chaos, and transformation. And he knows in his marrow that if he resists her, he will remain half a man forever. You, as a woman, may have felt this fear in the eyes of men who desired you. They wanted you but flinched from the intensity of your truth. They clung to your surface while trembling before your depths. This is not your weakness. It is your proof. The fact that your presence alone can summon their shadow means you are carrying the very energy they cannot ignore, no matter how they try to rationalize it. Yet here lies the paradox. While men worship the forbidden feminine, they also try to erase her. Culture itself conspires in this erasure, teaching women to be compliant, likable, endlessly accommodating. To step outside those bounds is to risk being branded as dangerous, cold, or too independent. But what is really feared is not independence, it is sovereignty. For the sovereign woman answers not to external approval but to her own inner law. She embodies the archetype of the queen, not the servant, and a queen cannot be owned. This is why she is forbidden, not because she is immoral or destructive, but because she reminds men of the limits of their power. She exposes the illusion that control can create safety. She awakens in them the raw truth that life itself is uncontrollable. And rather than being diminished by this truth, she thrives in it. She moves like the ocean, untamed and infinite. The Stoics would recognize her energy, though they would describe it differently. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the universe itself is change, and our refusal to accept it is the source of suffering. The forbidden feminine does not refuse. She embodies change. She allows endings. She initiates beginnings. She holds death and birth in the same embrace. To meet her is to meet the flow of life itself. No wonder men secretly worship her, for in her presence they are reminded of eternity. But let us be clear. Worship is not the same as love. Many men will worship from a distance, unable to draw near to her fire. They will fantasize, idolize, even obsess, but they will not stand beside her, for that requires the courage to face their own shadow. And yet, the few who can, they will discover a union that transcends possession. For in her, they will meet not a woman in the small sense, but the eternal feminine, the Sophia, the anima, the archetype that has guided men since the dawn of time. For you, the task is not to soften yourself to be chosen, but to remain whole enough to choose. The forbidden feminine never begs for recognition. She does not water down her depths for shallow approval. Instead, she stands rooted, even if it means standing alone. She knows that her power is not in being liked, but in being unforgettable. And perhaps this is what unsettles men most. They realize that long after the conversation has ended, long after the body has departed, long after the touch has faded, her presence lingers. She remains in their thoughts, in their dreams, in their restless hunger. She awakens a longing that no other can quite satisfy, for what they crave is not her body, nor her beauty, but her essence, the mystery that refuses to be owned. This is why men worship in secret. To admit it openly would be to confess their dependence on what they cannot control. And yet, the forbidden feminine has no need to be confessed. Her presence alone is confession. She is the evidence. She is the reminder that power does not beg, and mystery does not explain itself. And so she walks, untouchable, sovereign, carrying within her the dangerous truth that freedom, beauty, and power are not given by others. They are remembered within. The men who sense it fall to their knees, whether in silence or in worship, for in her presence they see not only her, but the wholeness they have been running from all their lives. The woman who knows this no longer asks, "Will I be loved?" She asks, "Will I remain true?" And in that single shift, she ceases to be ordinary and becomes eternal.